So the first thing is that emotional fitness is really a skill. And the skill first requires awareness, and second requires change, a change in the way that you're thinking, a change in the way that you're behaving, moving, and then a change in the way that you are feeling. And when you can do this coupled with a clear intention, a clear purpose, the outcome tends to be a positive one, tends to be a progressive one, tends to be a successful one. And if you think about success as succession, it becomes a stepping stone. So you're always in this moment, experiencing this moment, but it's coupled in our consciousness, in our awareness with our purpose. And that purpose becomes the foundation.
At Active Life, we believe that the healthcare clinic of the future is the gym.
Everybody starts with the best case scenario in mind.
Never sell anything to anybody who is not in the market for what you have.
The only reason we work out is to create the opportunity to recover.
And the healthcare provider of the future is the coach.
And this is why you guys need to get paid well, because what you're doing is really, really hard work.
Carl Paoli, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's been a minute, but here we are.
It has been a minute. In the pre-show, I was talking about, for the people who are not watching the video, when we last talked, you had way less hair.
That's right. I used to go get my hair cut, and since the pandemic started, I said, well, until they say the pandemic is officially over, I'm not cutting my hair. You see where it goes.
I don't know if we're going to be alive that long.
Who knows? Yeah. Whatever. I may have to end the pandemic myself.
Yeah, you might.
Right.
How do you like having long hair?
It's cool. I mean, I don't necessarily love it in my face, and it gets everywhere. And I notice that it's in the shower a little bit more. And yeah, there are little things that bother me, but otherwise it's just kind of fun. My wife doesn't like it. Obviously.
Is that part of what makes it fun for you, though?
Maybe that's one of the reasons I keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it saves me money. I used to spend a lot of money on haircuts.
I know how that goes. I paid for my 2021, 2022 year today.
Oh, wow. And?
Yeah. I mean, so, it's funny, when I started working with my barber, meaning working with him, getting my haircut by him, it was $17 a haircut. And I told him, I was like, I'd rather pay for the year up front than have to pay you every week. So what does that cost? And he cut 20% off right away. And I was like, all right, fine. So over the course of 2.5 years sitting in his chair, talking about business, I've helped him and convinced him to raise his rates over and over and over again. So it's now $40 a haircut. There is no 20% discount at all. And I still pay for the year up front. So I'm kind of screwing myself on that one, but it's a better environment in there now.
Well, you serve him, he serves you, and the money is just a metric.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So you told me a minute ago you just became a grandpa.
Yeah. 6.5 months ago now, we became grandparents.
I have a hard enough time taking care of my own kids, and I'm 3 years behind you.
There you go.
The thought of being a grandparent and helping my kid take care of their kids right now, I don't know if I could do that. How is it going?
Let's just say it's going.
Right.
No, it's going really well. It's been interesting to experience our daughter becoming a mother and a parent, and then how our relationship has changed. And then getting to know this little guy who all of a sudden out of nowhere seemed to have appeared in our life. And now us being madly in love with him, and getting to witness all the little progress that he makes every day. I mean, just grabbing something and putting it in his mouth. It's special. So we're enjoying the little things. Of course, it comes with more complications, and but the complications are just leading to a greater sense of awareness, and it feels amazing.
Well, how does a relationship change? Because one of the things you're working on right now is helping people develop emotional fitness. And this strikes me as a moment in which you definitely need to have it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see if I can remember exactly something that was shared with me the other day. Somebody said, you don't learn how to become a son or somebody's child until you become a parent. You don't learn how to become somebody's parent until you become a grandparent. In other words, what this means is that once you are transcending your current role, that's the moment you begin to understand. Mm-hmm. So we're always behind.
That's interesting.
And yeah, it is interesting. And this is kind of like the saying that life can only be understood in retrospect, mm-hmm. completely understood. But you can be present to some degree at every single point in time. And this presence, as long as it has an awareness or an anchoring in your intention on how you intend to be present, there is meaning. And when it comes to emotional fitness, I personally define emotional fitness as our ability to move into a state of being that translates into purposeful action. So the first thing is that emotional fitness is really a skill. And the skill first requires awareness, and second requires change, a change in the way that you're thinking, a change in the way that you're behaving, moving, and then a change in the way that you are feeling. And when you can do this coupled with a clear intention, a clear purpose, the outcome tends to be a positive one, tends to be a progressive one, tends to be a successful one. And if you think about success as succession, it becomes a stepping stone. So you're always in this moment, experiencing this moment, but it's coupled in our consciousness, in our awareness with our purpose. And that purpose becomes the foundation. So as a grandparent, for example, my purpose is to make sure that my daughter is constantly empowered to continue to be a parent, that she has all the resources, that she has the guidance, that she has the support, but that her role is to be just that, the parent. And our role is to be her parent. And as grandparents, simply spilling over a generation into the little guy.
So my kids are 2, 4, and 6 as we record this. And since this is coming out probably on Monday, they'll still be 2, 4, and 6 when this comes out. Yeah. I'm far from being able to understand at which point parenting a child becomes parenting an adolescent, becomes parenting an adult, becomes mentoring an adult. Mm-hmm. That I think that's the progression of parenthood. That's the one, at least, that's the plan I've imagined in my head.
Yeah.
One of the things I imagine in that plan is that a 20-year-old is not done being parented. We haven't moved yet from the parenting to the mentoring phase of life, is what my expectation of my relationship with my kids is going to be. And that's based on zero experience whatsoever. Does that feel accurate to you? And if it is, how do you shift from, parenting to almost needing to move into a flexible role of both parenting and mentoring when needed?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, this is just like when you work with a client or you're in any kind of relationship, it's being able to meet the person where they're at and realizing, okay, this is what they're currently feeling. This is what they're currently needing. According to my role, how do I provide? Mm-hmm. And I think it's in that flexibility of roles where you're able to support your kid regardless of the age. I mean, I'm a grown ass adult technically, and I still seek out advice or encouragement or just a listening ear from my parents.
Why'd you say technically?
Say that again?
Why'd you call yourself a grown ass adult technically? Why technically?
Because I feel like a kid. I don't feel like I am 40. I feel like I am 16.
Is that, do you feel, when you say you feel like you're 16, you mean physically? Do you mean mentally?
Mentally, emotionally, physically, even. I mean, my body hurts in a different way than it used to when I was 16, or at least I'm aware of my body feeling different, and that maybe my capacities aren't the same, but I feel the same. Internally, I'm still the same person. I mean, I think about this all the time. I think to when I was maybe 5, 6, 7, and I realize I'm the same person I was then.
Mm-hmm. Are you though?
Just different experiences. Yeah, for sure.
So you don't think that you've matured, like you don't think you've grown and been able to create more awareness around your thoughts than when you were 5 and 6 years old?
Oh my expression and awareness of the essence of who I am is greater, but I'm still the same. The essence of who I am hasn't evolved. That's remained constant. But the way that it's expressing itself, I'm expressing myself, that has changed. And my awareness, so to speak, has also shifted. And this sounds very meta and very esoteric, but it's the concept of there being a constant of who we are versus how we express ourselves in this physical form. The expression changes. The state, the physical state, that which you perceive changes, but that which you are remains the same.
Yeah, I'm when you're talking about that, I'm envisioning it. You ever played the game of tetherball?
I haven't played, but I know what it is.
You've never played tetherball? I feel like you need to put one in your backyard.
I grew up in Spain. We didn't have that.
Okay. So, for people who don't know what it is, it's a ball that's tied to a rope that you stand opposite somebody else and you try to smack it around the pole until you've wrapped it all the way around. What you just described to me is almost as if you are the pole and the expression of yourself is the arc of the ball in either direction at any height, at any distance from the pole at any given time. It could switch as quickly as somebody is prepared to hit it.
Yeah, definitely. The way that I see it is, imagine a spiral staircase. My life is walking up the spiral staircase. The center of that spiral staircase is me. So I'm always the same person. I'm simply ascending in awareness, and I'm taking one step at a time. And every time I go around, I see a different side of the world.
I like yours.
And it's kind of like, becoming a grandparent is part of that. It's kind of like, I just completed a lap around the spiral staircase when it comes to my role as a caregiver, for example.
Yeah, I like yours better than mine. Spiral staircase.
Yours is good too. Yours is good too because if you think about it at a micro level versus macro level, the spiral staircase is macro. The tetherball is micro. Think about how many shifts in ideas you have, how many shifts in states of being you have throughout the day. Short term, we're the tetherball, but long term, we're the spiral staircase.
Okay. I can get behind that. It's the
cool.
It's like the stock market line. It's the squiggly bounce up to the top.
There it is.
I hear you.
There it is.
Do you still practice gymnastics?
I do practice a form of gymnastics. I do a lot of hand balancing lately, and I'm actually hanging out with a gymnast from Spain who's here in the U.S. right now. And next week, I think we're going to go into the gymnastics facility to get a little training in. So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm going to be doing real gymnastics.
Well, so
grandpa gymnastics.
Right. Well, look, you're not the everyday. You're not the grandpa people are envisioning when they think grandpa.
Right.
And how much older than you were your parents?
My parents are 35 years older than I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've made a fairly significant pivot in how you decided to live your public life, if you will, and how you service other people and how you think about what you're doing and what it is that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And you've done what I like to think about as when an animal, like when a bug leaves its shell or an animal leaves its shell and it needs to go find a bigger shell to live in, and the old shell, like that was me. That was a part of me. And I'm no longer living in that. There's a moment of vulnerability when that animal leaves shell 1 on its way to shell 2, when it's much easier to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm still in it.
You're still in it. So that's what I wanted to ask about. What is that like in that middle ground?
Well, if I stop to actually think about it, and I thought about it from your perspective, pure biology, it would be scary as hell. But when I think about it as I'm experiencing it, it feels very exciting. It feels very empowering. It feels unlimited. There's a lot of potential. There are a great number of choices that I can make, and every single choice leads to a positive outcome. And it's also a place where you really have nothing to lose. You're completely vulnerable. So, and when you're in a place where there's nothing to lose, you're capable of doing anything.
Well, so I want to push back on nothing to lose, because I know the people who are listening to this are going to be thinking, how did he have nothing to lose? I can't do that. I would have everything to lose. And what I'm speaking about there is really professionally, financially. I was never privy to your bank accounts, but when you did a seminar, people would come. When you put out education, people would buy. And you go from doing something that is like, you probably could have rinsed and repeated that forever and had a fairly consistent income.
Yes.
And then you move to, okay, I'm going to do something different. What I'm perceiving you have to lose is the financial stability in your life, but maybe I'm way off.
Yeah. Something that I didn't realize, and this is something that when I started to find a little success, or what somebody would call success, where I put out a seminar and it fills up, what I didn't realize is that I had no business managing or having the amount of resources that were coming my way. I wasn't prepared for that. Nobody had taught me how to do that. So when it was there, I operated from a place of fear, scarcity. I'm going to lose this. This is going to go away. I would spend money in a way that didn't make sense. I would hoard it sometimes and then spend it in ways that didn't make any sense. And this is where I came to realize that just because my bank account said something, a certain number, it didn't mean that I actually had it.
Because of how you would behave with it.
Exactly.
Can you speak to something that you did that didn't make any sense with your money?
Yeah, I would hoard my money. Basically, I would save my money, thinking that I had to build this big nest egg, because otherwise, when it were to go away, I wouldn't have something to fall onto. Okay, so that's one thing. And what I realize is that money is there to flow. This is kind of like in nature. In nature, there's no hoarding. There's only movement. So I wasn't moving my money in a way that was conducive to my growth, my ability to serve others at a higher level, add value to my family in truly meaningful ways, in ways that can produce generational wealth. It was very a short-term approach. And I would spend money on things like traveling very comfortably. And I thought that I needed it because I needed to be rested for my, seminars, or, anytime I went out for dinner with friends, I would always be the one that paid. And I realized that I was spending money on things that weren't serving me and weren't really serving others. Furthermore, I didn't understand the value of a dollar. I didn't understand the value of the currency. And I didn't realize I realized that I was very fortunate for having the opportunity to see such an influx of revenue coming my way. But I didn't realize the curse that came with it, which was that when you have resources, you need to become aware of what those resources are capable of doing. And it's your job to put those into play in meaningful ways. If you don't know how to do that, then that money is not yours. It's going to go away. It was never in your possession in the first place.
Right. So I guess what you're saying is, despite the fact that there was money available, there wasn't a structured lifestyle set up around it such that you needed to keep earning the way that you were earning. And so it was like, all right, well, when I was hoarding, this is how I lived. And if I don't make any money, I'll just live like I was hoarding.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So that was an interesting process to go through. And I've had to really work on my relationship with money for a long time. And I remember I went to visit a friend who worked for a startup here in the Bay Area in California. And the founder, he asked me, hey, what's your hourly rate? And I was like, I think it's 150. I wasn't doing any personal training, but I was thinking it's 150. And he left, and he came back maybe like 10 minutes later. He said, hey, I looked at your website, and I see that you do these seminars, and I saw that the price is $295, and I counted the average head count on those group pictures. It's around 45 to 50 people. That means that according to the schedule that you have online, your hourly rate is $3,000. And when he said that, even though it was true, technically true, I didn't believe it. Right. And that was a big problem there.
Why was it a big problem?
Because if I didn't believe that was my rate, that was my capacity at that moment, how was I ever going to be able to receive that? How was I ever going to be able to work with that?
Right.
How was I ever able to move beyond that? My mindset was capped already. I was operating by, when I said 150, I was operating by the standard that was around me.
Well, what you may or may not have realized in the moment or in retrospect, or may not agree with, was that the value that you were bringing to the world was too great to place on one person for the value that one person typically would be willing to or interested in parting with financially in order to receive that value. And so it's almost like you wouldn't bring a 6-gallon Poland Spring jug, to the dinner table with you to drink from. You need water, but you don't need all of that water. But you have Poland Spring jugs to distribute, not cups. Right. And so here we are with our analogies. Well, my analogy again. But it's interesting. You're making me think, because I often think about the value that an individual provides to others as that the peak of what they can provide is going to be one-on-one. But you're speaking to the way that what somebody's able to provide to a group could actually be of greater value overall than what they provide to the individual. Which leaves me really perplexed, and I'm interested in your take on it. Because if you enroll in group fitness, it's going to cost you less than if you enroll in one-on-one fitness. Why is it that and then by the way, the amount that we're able to typically pay somebody for delivering group fitness is lower than what they're able to be paid for delivering one-on-one fitness? How do we rectify that?
I'm uncertain, but what's coming up for me is accessibility and resources. The gateway, so to speak, to getting access to resources has a price. And the way that resources is provided will influence the price. And here's where there's price versus cost. Price is the upfront number that you see, the ticket, and the cost is the value over time.
Okay.
So when it comes to group fitness, what is the saturation point? The point where the number of people that are present in that moment, once it hits a certain number, the return of investment or the resource return or the access to that resource, when does it start to diminish? When does it start to decline?
Well, I mean, you had 45 people in a room.
Yeah, and everybody felt like I had spoken to them directly.
Because you probably did at some point.
I did, yes. And one of the reasons is because when I speak, I don't speak from my self. I speak from where the people in the audience are.
What does that mean?
That means that the first thing that I do when I show up at a seminar, whether there are 3 people or 100 people, is I determine where they are, what they need. And I do this by asking questions. I do this by prompting certain things and seeing what the reactions are. So I take the temperature. And when I take the temperature and I know where they're standing, I speak from that place. And I use my knowledge, my expertise, whatever it is that I've accumulated over time, plus my instincts, to become a translator. And this kind of becomes the example of the mirror. I simply become a mirror for what they are looking for, and I use my value, my resources to deploy that.
I think a lot of people would say that they kind of gauge the room. The way that you described that sounded more methodical. Do you have a practice that you do? Like when you show up, there's an intentional measuring?
Well, yeah, it's intentional, but it happens in a different way every single time. And it depends on how I'm feeling. But it usually comes with a question as simple as, why are you here? What are you looking for? Why do you care about this? What's your background? How do you feel about that? Very simple questions that once you get the people speaking, you get a sense of where things are going. And then once you have that gauge, like you said, then you can start to deploy the structure, the method, the technique, the system, the value that you have. But you do it in a way, and this is one of the things that I always did was, and I continue to do, is I let people know that I only know so much. So whatever it is that I say, don't allow me to get away with that if you know something else.
What do you mean?
Yeah, you should challenge me. Challenge my knowledge.
What's the difference?
Challenge what I'm telling you.
What's the difference between challenging and trolling?
Trolling is kind of like the heckler, right? It's the person that needs some kind of attention. But usually in a seminar, it's pretty easy to shut a troller down. Because all you have to do is put the focus on them. And once you put the spotlight on them, which is what they think they want.
Yeah, I've been there.
then the whole thing changes. But my intention by doing that is never to put them in a place where they are being judged or potentially can be harmed, but rather to really access what it is that they're currently experiencing, and how, in this moment, through myself and the group, can we arrive at a place where, 1, we can identify what we're feeling, 2, we can identify what we're thinking around those feelings, and 3, to identify what it is that we need. And when we know what we need, to use very simple, practical tools to get them met.
That's hard to do for 45 people at a time.
It's very hard to do, but you can speak to an individual from a place that is 100% transparent. And that transparency, although being directed as at an individual, is relatable to the group.
Do you think that a part of the reason why your rate is $3,000 an hour is because of the scarcity with which you're accessible?
100%. I mean, this is the demand is always going to be higher than what I have to offer, which is myself, my experience. There's only one me, but my knowledge exists in many forms in other people. So if people resonate with me, there's only one me. That's right. That becomes a pretty high ticket item.
Yeah. So are you finding it difficult, simple, similar to acquire the trust and the authority around emotional fitness, which you're working with people on now, that you did around gymnastics?
That's a great question. I would say I'm finding it challenging simply because of the stage that I'm currently in. And an example of this is in 2004, when I was first coaching gymnastics with the expertise of just coming out of a gymnastics career. It was challenging to claim my stake in the ground and say, hey, this is where I stand, this is what I believe in, and this is what I have to offer, and you should respect me for this. It was challenging then. But over time, as I slowly started to land in different environments, I started to realize how those different environments were conducive for growth. And one of the things that I did was I realized that the CrossFit environment was ripe. It was perfect for me. Mm-hmm. And there was definitely a little luck, but a lot of preparation. And right now I'm back where I was in 2004, where I'm working very slowly. I'm doing enough technically.
What credibility do you have to fall back on? Because the difference to me that you're describing from 2004 is in 2004, if I'm doing my math right, you already had 24 years minus probably 4 of credible experience as a gymnast. Mm-hmm. So you had 20 years in the can, which is your 10,000 plus hours.
Right. And now we're in 2021, mm-hmm. which this is 17 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And that puts me at 17 years of working with people, whether it was physically or not, where I have gained experience in working at an emotional level, at an intellectual level. And there's proof in the work that I do and the results that it produces. And they're out there. So if I had to start to pull a resume together, that wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
What is harder though is to speak in a way that brings a language that people resonate with, mm-hmm. and that is of the time, yet one that can evolve.
Right.
And that's currently what I'm working on and what is slowly coming out. And the way that you do that is by having conversations like this, by working with people and hearing what they are saying, and then learning the terms that continue to repeat themselves, and then start to acquire those as your lexicon, and then start to formulate a code, a system, a way of speaking that transcends the individual.
I love that you took it right back to your 17 years into this, because you had to develop the emotional fitness while you were doing the thing. Mm-hmm. And for people who don't know, maybe some of our listeners are new since we last spoke, you were showing up for a seminar whether there were 3 or 100. Right. And you've had both, mm-hmm. I believe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As somebody who also has presented many times in front of groups, there is I'll call it an anxiety, because I don't have a better word right now, when tickets go on sale. Mm-hmm. I hope this fills. Mm-hmm. And not for the money. Like, 'cause a dud of an event isn't ending a career. It's how will I feel if I show up to a room that I sold tickets to on purpose for a month, and there's only 2 or 3 people there? How are they going to feel like, wow, I get this amazing, small, intimate experience for this fairly low price? Or are they going to think, did we make a mistake enrolling in this? And how do I show up as the highly confident, charismatic version of myself to a room that is an obvious failing of what my intentions were? Right. Yeah. And you've done that too.
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. My ego loves a full house.
Sure.
but the side of me that is committed to teaching is there 100% and feels amazing and feels fulfilled. Mm-hmm. So it's important that you balance both of those. And this is something that you can't leave your ego at the door. That doesn't exist. That's not a thing.
No, my ego comes with me everywhere.
Exactly. But your ego can give you the awareness, the contrast that you need to double down on your purpose, on your intention. And when you double down on your purpose and your intention, and you do that consistently, the vibe that you put out carries. And when that carries, it transfers beyond the room. Mm-hmm. And this is something that it's not a matter of faith. It's also a matter of execution. Mm-hmm. And it can be as simple as, if there are two people in the room, to say something as simple as, if this was of value to you, please share it with people. That's it. Mm-hmm. And word of mouth is still the most powerful way of getting the message out.
Yeah, and the most inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think you defined it earlier in this conversation, but what is emotional fitness?
Yeah, so if we go back to the definition of emotional fitness, it's the ability to move into a state of being that translates into purposeful action.
Okay. So go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. So if you think about your state of being, you may think about your affect, how you're feeling in this moment. But your state of being is also associated with what you're thinking. It's also associated with how you are physically experiencing life right now. And sometimes you're going to be hurting. Sometimes you're going to be in a negative state of mind. Sometimes you're going to be feeling low on energy. But that doesn't mean that state of being isn't capable of executing, acting, being purposeful.
Right.
So the first movement in fitness is into awareness.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I'm interviewing Athena Perez coming up. I don't know if you know who she is.
No.
So she's a large-bodied individual who advocates for the things that gym owners and coaches and trainers need to know about dealing with a large-bodied client. And when you spoke about, she owns a gym. She's lost 200 plus pounds. I'm very excited to talk with her. I've been talking with her a lot, so I think that our podcast is going to come out really good. What you talked about there a moment ago was that your state influences action, and the first part of fitness is awareness. And it was so interesting because I'm prompted to think of the conversations I've had with her, where she's described to me that when gym owners talk about start your weight loss journey here, what they fail to recognize is that the person who is 200, 300 pounds beyond their normal body weight, you know, the average body composition that we would expect of a healthy individual, they're not starting their journey in the gym. They're starting their journey with awareness years before they show up at the gym. And so it just tells that person that this entity likely doesn't understand what I had to go through just to show up here. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It does start with awareness.
It's a big one.
Well, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, so did you build a curriculum? Is this I'm trying to understand what it looks like to work with Carl Paoli on emotional fitness.
I can share exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
So there are three different stages that you go through. One, developing awareness. It's a practice. Two, developing a language. A language is not only a spoken language, but it's the language of the mind. It's the language of the body, how you move, how you act. And it's the language of emotions. And then finally, there is an application. The application is the translation into whatever it is that you want to do. You want to lose weight? Your awareness, the language that you develop, translates into losing weight. So that's at the highest level. As you navigate through awareness, language, and then application, you go through 4 stages. Stage number 1, expression. Expression is just doing. Just do. You want to move? Move. You want to create something? Start creating. You want to lose weight? Lose weight today. That's fine. What does that look like? Changing your diet? You're going to eat a little different? Whatever it may be, just express yourself. The second stage is experimentation. Deliberately express yourself. Choose. Be aware of how you are partaking. And then you have integration. This is when you start to experiment and you start to achieve results and you realize this way works for me. Thus, I can integrate it, and now it becomes a part of me. And then finally, you have transcendence. This is when you start to let go of that which you've learned because it's become reflexive, automated, and then you can move on into new expressions, new ways of being. And this is kind of like for people who lose a lot of weight. They lose a lot of weight, and by the time they've lost the weight, they still identify with the person they were before they started their journey. So the transcendence is letting go, allowing that person to die, allowing that person to leave, and for the new person to arrive, to come out. Mm-hmm. And that's the transcendence.
And do you do this with people one-on-one? Do you do this through templated
one-on-one
courses? Okay.
Yeah, groups. I do online courses. I have a couple of courses that I run now online, and it's been really fun because every time you get to experience the program in a completely different way, as the participants are the ones who influence how it's deployed. But one of them is called Interface, and the interface is all about learning how to interface with yourself. And to do this through the body and to do it through different practices such as journaling, meditation and breath work, movement, and creativity.
And when you're doing this with people, is there an end?
There's not an end necessarily to the process. The process is ever happening, but there's an end to the course. Thus, there has to be an end to what they chose to participate or accomplish within the period of time that we were together. Mm-hmm. And most of the times, it doesn't look anything like what they thought it was going to be.
Do you find yourself putting any more pressure on yourself to be emotionally resilient because you've now chosen the path of helping people develop emotional fitness?
No, less than ever. Because, and this is something that we talk about as important as heart rate variability is, for example, mm-hmm. for showcasing fitness or measuring fitness or being metabolically flexible, being emotionally flexible is also important. And we have emotional variability. You go through various states of being throughout the day. That variation in your states of being is what makes you human. Yeah. And they're like waves that you can catch, and they're there for a reason. I highly recommend that anybody listening, and if you haven't read her, you should read her too. Lisa Feldman Barrett, How Emotions Are Made. It's a fantastic read on why we are emotional beings and how our emotions serve us. And in a nutshell, it's basically the concept that our emotions are the lens through which we see the world. And we create these emotions in order for our brain to prepare our body, predicting what is going to happen, to prepare our body so that we can act.
You know, it's funny because as you were talking about riding the waves, I think that one of the ways that I have matured is potentially in its own way productive and counterproductive at the same time. When I was in high school and in college, especially when I was playing sports, when the rules were different than when you're in a classroom or with friends, I would ride big emotional waves, like scream at people, cry, celebrate. Like, yes, it was all right there. I was the guy with it on the sleeve. And as I became an adult, I learned that the amplitudes of the waves that I rode were not desirable to be around. And so I've tamed them. And I can tell you without any question, it's probably been years since I've felt the top or the bottom. And the truth is, I miss each of them equally.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, but one thing that is for certain is that with age comes a greater level of emotional balance, and it's kind of like moving to the coast. The ocean or a sea acts as a thermal regulator. It controls the temperature. So the seasons when you're on the coast aren't as noticeable in the shift. Mm-hmm. And it's because of this big body of water that takes more time to change in temperature.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing inside of you. This body of awareness acts as a emotional regulator. Now, the other side is it possible that part of you has dampened those emotions because you have a desire to achieve something or to please somebody or to be somebody who maybe society claims to be a better version of yourself?
Oh, no doubt about it.
Right. So 100%. You're influenced.
Yes.
And this is kind of the example of if I started to cry here right now for whatever reason, maybe I'm telling you something really sad and I start to just sob. I may be a little embarrassed that I was crying, and you may not even know what to say. You may not know how to console me in this moment. So it becomes this very awkward, uncomfortable moment. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever cried uncontrollably, you know that there's something very cathartic about it. There's something very healing about it. So the paradox here is, why is that which we are ashamed of, that which we try to hide, why is that which we need many times to heal or to move the big stuff through?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And I don't know what the answer is, but I know that that's where the work happens. And that's where it's the scariest. That's where it's ever changing. That's where it's very unknown. The good news is that it doesn't lead to immediate death.
Truth. That's true.
Okay? and it's remembering that this too shall pass. So let it happen. And as it happens, notice what it's bringing up for you. Notice what you're seeing in other people when you're experiencing it. And don't try to fix it. Don't try to control it.
I can tell you, for me personally, it's I like to joke around that my set point, like my relax, go back to set point is tyrant. Like my most comfortable place in the world is just to be like, do this, do that. You're out, you're in. That's comfortable for me. The high level of conflict, and that's where I, like when COVID hit, I was like, great. Not great that people are going to die and they're going to get sick, but it was just, this is the time in business that people actually seek authoritative leadership from a business owner. And it was easy for me to just go to what I do all the time, what I could do all the time. I bet if you interviewed my staff, our team is a better way to put it, they would tell you, Sean thinks he's stoic. No, Sean's not stoic. And the reason that they would say that is they've never seen more than 10% of where my brain and body want to go. Right. So I'm like, yeah, I'm stoic. I don't get too high. I don't get too low. They'd be like, no. He definitely doesn't. Like, you haven't seen the start of it.
Yeah, I can see that. That's pretty amazing. At the same time, just the fact that you can say that means that there's a high degree of emotional intelligence there and a high degree of awareness. The question is, should you let loose a little bit more often?
I think sometimes I should. Sometimes.
Should you show that? But it comes with, there's a cost to it. Mm-hmm. And that's why preparation is so important. Hey, team, I may lose my shit.
Yeah.
But just know, when I lose my shit, it's because I love you guys so much and I care so deeply.
Mm-hmm. And I'm comfortable. I'm not actually losing my shit in the way that you think I'm losing my shit. I got to go to a comfortable place. It's going to be really uncomfortable for you, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I talked to a friend of mine about the way that I present myself on social media. And I explained to her that, like, the way I explained it was I've been living like the player who, after a game, just says, like, we did the thing, followed the plan. When things went wrong, we adjusted and we got the job done. And what I need to do is be more like the Muhammad Ali that I feel like I am inside. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to let that out. Mm-hmm. And she said, you don't think you are? I don't think I am at all.
That's funny. I mean, yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. I think this is something I was thinking about yesterday, and I've thought about it several times, but it's easy to fall into the trap of becoming a character of yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on social media. And the question is, how do you present on social media in the most authentic way?
Yeah. It is hard.
It's hard. I mean, just look at Elon Musk. If he goes on the Joe Rogan podcast and smokes a joint, and all of a sudden the Tesla stock collapses.
Time to buy.
I mean, yeah. All of a sudden you can't be your genuine self for something that is complete nonsense, that somebody would be scared of somebody, taking a puff of a joint, for example.
Right.
It's ridiculous, but it is the truth. It is the reality, at least the immediate reality that exists in our current society.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is, you're right. Like, what do we think, he's less credible now? Like, do we think the car doesn't go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds without a drop of gasoline?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Carl, this time has gone by pretty quick. I've enjoyed speaking to you about a topic totally different than handstands and forward rolls.
There you go. Well, it applies to handstands and forward rolls, which is great too.
I imagine it applies to everything.
Yeah.
So how do people find you if they want to learn more or get involved in developing emotional fitness?
Yeah, they can go to freestyleconnection.com, or they can just find me on any social media platform. And
so it's in the same place.
It's in the same place. Yeah. Well, it's just hidden behind the movement expression.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Carl, I appreciate you sharing some time with me today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Active Life Podcast. If you did, please be sure to head to wherever you listened to it and give us a quality review, as well as 5 stars if you can spare them. If you want more from us, feel free to follow all of our social media accounts at Active Life Professional, Active Life RX, and Dr. Sean Pastuch on Instagram. Remember, at Active Life, we believe that the healthcare clinic of the future is the gym, and the healthcare provider of the future is the coach. We also believe that future is now.